Welcome into the Sports Objective right here on Facebook Live, and of course on our YouTube channel. Bubba, we got a very special show tonight, as always.
Absolutely, talking baseball on a variety of levels. Welcome into the program for the first time, a guy who wears many hats, Josh Rudd. Josh, we appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Bubba, Dave, thank you guys for having me, man. Nobody asked me to do interviews, so this is interesting. I'm always the guy asking other people.
Well, we wanted to have you on. There's so much to talk about tonight, right, Bubba? I mean, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with, I guess we could start with the cutting of sports right now. It's been one of the hot topics, including looks like there's going to be a few sports cut in Greenville, unfortunately, with East Carolina, a lot of problems, and now the latest problem with COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. Here in the last few days, on Bowling Green, of course, in the MAC, dropped their baseball program, and then also yesterday, Furman dropped their baseball program. And I know that's a situation you know a little bit about, Josh.
Yeah, it's an awful situation. I broke that news yesterday, which was, I'm not proud of that being my first breaking news story ever, because it's an awful thing. It's really sad, definitely for the players. For me, I'm sad for the players, but I'm really concerned about the coaches. Like the players. It's terrible, but I know these guys are high-level players and good students at that school. Like I know they're going to find new homes if they want to find new homes, right? But these coaches, like, what about their kids? That's their full-time jobs. Like that, to me, is what really shook me last night. Was thinking about those guys, and I know it's a great staff that Coach Harker has and Coach Davis and all the guys over there, But I think that was the first time that this thing really hit home for me, because I do know them. And I just thought about, like, man, what are these guys going to do? I know that right now on social media, I see a lot of people that express their opinions about what schools should be doing and things of that nature. And I saw Furman took a lot of heat for it when they put their statement out. My thing on it is that I know these schools are the administration, they're lifetime educators, right? They're lifetime business people. They're way smarter than we are. It's always easy to sit on the outside and say, we know better, right? Or, oh, what are you doing? But these people are not making these decisions lightheartedly. Like they care about their university. They care about their students. They care about their coaches. The athletic departments, I know they did everything they can to keep it. There's got to be good reason why they're not keeping them. And I don't know what that is. And nobody does unless you're inside of that office. So it's really unfortunate, but I'm sure that these schools that are making cuts are doing everything they can to keep these programs. This is an absolute last resort. And it's an awful situation that they must not have another choice, like a lot of people in the country are dealing with right now.
Yeah, you talk about programs cutting sports, and we talked about Bowling Green and Furman with baseball, and then you've had Cincinnati drop men's soccer, FIU with their men's indoor track program, Akron cut 3 sports: men's cross country, men's golf, and women's tennis. So it's a trend I'm afraid we're going to see continue. Hopefully it won't continue, but so much, so the student athletes aren't losing these opportunities. Both present and future athletes. Obviously you want to see those kids have the opportunity to compete and have a college education paid for. But as far as baseball is concerned, I know we had 301 teams, and now we've lost 2 of those. Have you heard anything as far as any others that may be on the chopping block as far as college baseball is concerned?
I don't think that I've heard anything that nobody else has heard that's not out there on social media. That's not even something. I'm happy I'm not the guys at D1 baseball right now. They do an excellent job. They put out the best content there is for the Division I level. But what they're having to do right now, like, I would not want the inside scoop on that stuff. Like, what are you supposed to do? Reach out to guys and say, hey, are you going to lose your job? What's the news? So I don't. I'm kind of like everybody else. That was a situation where I just kind of got that news first yesterday. And it was really hard to put that news out yesterday. I thought about it. Should I just wait and let the actual news people put this thing out? And I was conflicted. I talked to Rob Friedman, pitching ninja background, and we kind of felt like, hey, I would have loved to seen the coaches put it out first, right? And the university put it out first. That's the right way that it should be done. Not some guy saying, hey, Furman cut their baseball program. That's where I was uncomfortable with it. But then in talking to Rob, it was like, hey, the coaches in the program, they're not putting it out first. Doesn't matter what we do. It's going to come out with parents and kids right now. And it's going to be an absolute circus in the next 5-10 minutes. So I kind of made the decision, and Rob and I did together, because he went and put it on Flat Ground and retweeted it on Pitching Ninja, that, you know what, maybe we'll make it a tiny bit better if some sort of source that might have a little bit of a reputation in the game went ahead, put it out really simple, and we kind of immediately can move to the griefing stage, as opposed to sitting here in circus mode and where did you hear that from and this and that, you know? So, but no, that was a special situation, to go back to your original question. And I haven't heard of anything right now, and I would definitely not speculate on it. Hopefully nobody else it happens to.
Now, Josh, before we dive any farther into your association with the game of baseball, just tell our viewers your background. I know you grew up in South Florida, down around Miami. You went to Florida State, were able to work with the Hall of Famer, a legend like Mike Martin Sr., of course, who stepped down last year after the College World Series, after that tremendous run by the Seminoles. So just talk about your upbringing, your love of the game of baseball, and just how things progressed.
Yeah, South Florida kid, played baseball, came up in the time where travel ball and perfect game was really becoming a thing. I mean, I remember when I was playing and people talk about summer travel baseball, we were like, what's that? You know, and it was only the best of the best playing in that. Became a educator, which is crazy. I became a teacher and a coach. And the reason is because all the ones that I had when I was young sucked. And looking back on it, I could have really used a good one in my life. So I said, you know what, I'll try to be a good one maybe. And then, yeah, I went on, got a degree at Florida State in education. I decided I did not want to play baseball at a Division II or Division III level far away. I'd rather go in state, have fun, go to a big school. And so I went out and I wanted to be involved in the baseball team. And so I became kind of like clubby, catch balls, you know, help out, like travel with the team. It was cool. And I did get to work with Mike Martin Sr. and Jr. And it was awesome. I mean, it was awesome to watch those guys. And I don't think that I appreciated it for some time until afterwards, where I'm like, damn, like I was in that clubhouse with those guys on a daily basis. And then I ended up starting coaching while I was there in Tallahassee. I ended up becoming a clubby for the Marlins, and I reconnected with the guys at FSU because they would come to where I was in Jacksonville to play Florida a couple times a year. And then you kind of move forward. I'm doing some stuff now in the game, and yeah, I still communicate with Coach Martin, Coach Metcalf. I'm obviously biased, right? I'm only wearing an East Carolina shirt today because I'm on with you guys. But they're great, man. I'm very happy and relieved that Junior got that job because he 100% deserved that job. His dad was awesome. He's going to do even better, I say. He's amazing what he does. And Coach Metcalf, like, these are guys that do it right. In a day and age where everybody's so concerned about who's doing it wrong, like, I know the guys at FSU personally, and I can vouch for them and say they do it the right way. So I'm very proud to be affiliated and alum and still talking to those guys. So, and I've just kind of stayed around the game since in a variety of roles, from coaching to recruiting to promoting guys on social media and interviewing. Like, I really don't know what the hell I'm doing, to be quite honest with you. People ask me, like, what's the end game? What's the goal here? And I'm like, I don't really have one, man. I'm just kind of, I don't really know. I'm just calling guys and saying, hey, can I come over to campus and film and sit down and talk or whatever, and just having fun with the game still while I can. And I still do my teaching stuff. I'm a virtual school teacher, like a legitimate virtual school teacher, not just because of COVID-19. And so, yeah, it's nice. I get to work from home on my education stuff, and I still get the time to do baseball.
Now, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I know you told us beforehand, talk about your relationship. I know you mentioned Geoff Colombo, who we think a lot of in Greenville in East Carolina. I would love to have him on at some point. Talk about your relationship with him.
So Coach Palumbo, I was telling Bubba this before we went live. In my role, in what I do with recruiting, it's natural for coaches to have a little bit of a guard up when they meet a guy like me. And I get it. I 100% get it. I think it's human nature just in general when we meet somebody new, right? And I get it. I'm a middleman in the middle of college baseball, travel baseball, high school baseball. And so the trust factor, you really have to work on building that, right? Coach Palumbo is one of those guys, though, where he doesn't make any presumptions about who you are. Like, he gives you a chance to be who you are, and then we'll end up making that decision later whether or not you are worthy, if you're trustworthy or not. So Coach Palumbo has been one of those dudes from the start where it's like I was able to get – it's all about building relationships, right? And when you can build relationships with guys at programs like ECU and guys like Coach Palumbo that are so highly regarded in the game, well, all of a sudden, hey, Coach Palumbo knows me, then he can introduce me to Coach Godwin, right? And then, okay, I develop that relationship there, and then I meet another coach. So Coach Palumbo was one of those guys for me. He doesn't know that, I don't think, but I'm so appreciative of him and what he has done to just give me a chance to show that, hey, I can be a part of the game and I could, provide something good for college baseball, even though maybe I'm not a coach or a player.
Now, Josh, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, you talking about that relationship with Geoff Colombo. We hold him in such high regard, like Dave mentioned, and just the job he's done bringing in such tremendous talent. I know you have several different series on your YouTube channel that's quickly growing, well over 1,300 subscribers now. So just talk about some of those people you've had the opportunity to interview, be it head coaches or assistant coaches, and some of the things that you've learned.
Man, I would love to start listing off the names of the guys that I've had a chance to interact with on a personal level and in front of a camera. I would love to name those guys, but I'm so scared of leaving a name out. So I hope people will go and check that out. A buddy of mine asked me, he's like, you realize like who you've talked to in the past 8 months, and especially since the virus and these, what I've been doing with quarantined coaches and all this stuff. And it really didn't hit me until a couple of weeks ago, like looking back at this list of colleges and college coaches that I've talked to and been able to have a really personal conversation with and learn about them, their story, their programs. And it's been amazing. And if there's something that I've learned and I've taken away from it, it really is like the fact that there's so many good baseball coaches out there. There are so many qualified baseball coaches out there. It's great. Don't get me wrong. It has been amazing to sit with Coach Godwin and head coaches of SEC and ACC teams and other Power Fives. And then, some of the best Division IIs and IIIs and NAIAs. Like, that's awesome to sit with those head coaches that have made it to the top of their profession. But what's really struck me is these assistant coaches and these young guys that are coming up. Like, their minds are just like it's just different, right? They're full steam ahead. They're in the grind of it, trying to get to the top of the ladder. And it's really been amazing. Like, it's hard to explain. I've just learned that there are so many capable coaches out there and brilliant minds, and it gives you hope for the game of baseball for sure, and the longevity of it.
And as far as one of the series I know you have going on right now of the numerous ones, you got Pro Cuts where you're talking to different professional players, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the Learning from Leo series is a favorite of mine because I grew up a Braves fan like I know you did.
Yeah.
And so many unbelievable pitching staffs throughout the 90s. And Leo Mazzoni was obviously spearheading that. And I think one of the big things that I took away from the Learning from Leo series part 1 is just how Leo sometimes less is more. And you had guys coming in from different organizations who had struggled with those strikes or struggle with the mental aspect of the game and all sorts of things. And he just he's like, hey, be you. And he saw those guys just really rise to the forefront and pitch the way they could pitch.
Yeah, the learning from Leo thing it's to be honest with you, I have no idea what Leo Mazzoni was saying during the actual filming of it, because I couldn't stop thinking like, holy shit, I'm talking to Leo Mazzoni right now, you know? So it was because I'm a Braves fan growing up, and he's the best ever. He should be in the Hall of Fame. And I was just, all I could do during that interview was like stare at the back of his wall at his jerseys and like other things the whole time. But I've obviously had to watch it a bunch while I did the editing. He's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. There is a part coming up. It might be on part 2 of the series or part 3, where he talks about, like, I asked him, why don't you have a job right now? Like, why aren't you still coaching? You want to. And it's this intimidation thing where people think like, oh, he's going to come in here and he's going to think that he knows better. And that, maybe people think that his methods are outdated. But that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, that is crazy. He is such a brilliant mind. It's not even about Maddox, Glavine, and Schmaltz. In fact, I made a conscious effort during those 2 hours to not say those guys' names the entire time, because his body of work with all these other guys, which are in the series also, is amazing. It was just so fun to talk to him and hear from him, and the way he did things still would work, and they still do work for guys that are doing them. And I got to thank Caleb Davis, who is the pitching coach, or I guess was the pitching coach at Furman, for hooking that up, because Caleb is Leo's mentee. Leo has been the mentor for Caleb for years, and Furman's loss, and it's very unfortunate, is going to be somebody's big gain with Caleb. I mean, that kid is brilliant. He is the protege of Leo Mazzoni, and I'm excited to watch his career grow as well. And I think he was an awesome contributor to that series as well. It's really cool to see, just to get a visual on the generations being passed down, right? Like, we always hear about the generations being passed down, but like sitting in that interview and listening to those guys and communicating with them, like we saw it. We saw like the generation and the torch being passed, and it was really fun, really cool. And I will go back and watch it a ton for sure over the course of my life as a Braves fan.
Yeah, one of the things that I really took away, like you said, you expect to hear those household names, Maddox, Schmaltz, etc. But guys like Marvin Freeman, who came to Atlanta, just really trying to throw too hard, and then he took a little bit off, and he gave him that good 80 or 90, like Leo said, and developed into a tremendous pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, you can go down the list. I enjoyed the part where we got to talk about closers, and he started listing off, because to me, on the surface, being a Braves fan, I look back and I'm like, damn, man, we really struggled with closers until we had Wohlers and Rocker. And I was kind of going down that route, and he just made me feel this big when he starts going back and talking about the Greg McMichaels and the Alejandro Peñas, and he starts listing off the guys that were closing games for them, and Stanton and Merker even jumping in there. His body of work is crazy. Like, and there's a stat out there where if you look at pitchers under Leo Mazzoni, their ERA compared to whenever they've been anywhere else, and it's ridiculous. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's like more than a point lower of an ERA under Mazzoni than the rest of their career in other places.
Yeah, that was funny hearing that name, John Rocker, again. I remember well when the Braves were playing the Mets, and Rocker walking off the field, and they're throwing batteries at him, and he just looks right at him and says 3-0.
And man, I'll tell you what, dude, I wish that I could play. It's the stuff that I don't put out there that's the best, right? And everybody knows that as baseball guys, right? The stuff that I can't make public, like if I could just have a vault of that stuff and put it out there, it would be fantastic. And definitely some of the Rocker stories would lead the way on that vault of untold stories. I mean, he was a fun guy to not only watch, but hearing about what it was like to be around him was it's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, no doubt. Talk a little about the ProCut Series. You've had the opportunity to talk to a guy like Trevor Bauer, who actually pitched at Clark LeClaire Stadium when he was with UCLA back about a decade ago. So talk about some of the professional guys you've had the opportunity to catch up with.
So Trevor Bauer was on there. He was great. That was Rob Freeman, Pitching Ninjas connection. So I'm not going to take credit for getting him on there. He's obviously awesome. The Jesus, his story is really good too, about coming up and being bullied and being this outcast of a kid, which is really crazy to think about when you're a star athlete, and you were a star athlete in high school and college and the best player in college. You got the Golden Spikes Award and he's drafted 3rd overall. And you're saying like, that's like saying the star of the quarterback team is getting bullied in high school, So it was a really interesting story. The ProCut Series is all about trying to get with professionals and letting them tell their story and how they got to where they are to educate kids today. Really the high school aged kids today, right? And so Bauer's story was great. Jesus Luzardo, his story about getting injured and having Tommy John surgery his senior year of high school, yet then going and being a 3rd round pick, after having Tommy John surgery out of high school. Him looking back on it and talking about, did he do too much at showcase events? And looking back and saying, you know what, I didn't do a great job of communicating with my high school and my travel coaches so that I didn't get injured. There's that. We had Nathan Pavelchek, whose story out of Winthrop, he did the recruiting process as perfect as you can. Karan Patel, the first Indian origins player to play in professional baseball. There's a bunch that I haven't released. I have Ryan Flaherty on there that I still have to put out. We just got done with Mandy Bell, the Indians beat reporter for MLB.com, and her talking about being a female coming up and this Me Too movement in a male-dominated industry. There's a great story there. There's just so many great stories, and instead of telling kids things, you have to show them things, right? So I think when they can see this with their own eyes and see these people with their own eyes, like we're able with the Flat Ground platform that we have, we're able to give access to these keynote speakers across the country now, just like instantly, and I think it's just so great that we could do that. And that's what the ProCut Series is all about. That's going on now. And then the Quarantine Coaches Series that we finished, and it has over 50 college coaches on there. I don't even know what happened in that month of my life. That was crazy. I don't know what happened. It started with, hey, let me just get on here and talk to a couple guys and put some updates out there, to being a freaking national tour. And that's got a lot of valuable information for recruits, parents. And then it was wild because I really built the Quarantined Coaches Series for thinking it was going to be more for high school kids and high school families to learn, right? And before long, it turned into, this was a series of college coaches learning from college coaches. That's who I've been getting the feedback from and contacted by. And it's been really cool to see that. These guys go to the ABCA to hear each other talk and to learn from each other, right? And get to see 10, 15 guys over the course of a couple of days. But we were able to give 50 talks in a month. So it's been cool, and to see people appreciate it and to see how much people actually do yearn for that education is cool. And it's nice to be able to provide education because, again, that's my background is being in the education field.
One of those high-profile assistant coaches you've had the opportunity to talk to was Chris Fetter, the pitching coach at Michigan. That Michigan program is one we follow very closely at East Carolina because of Eric Bakich, the head coach, and also Nick Schnabel, They of course played for the legendary Keith LeClaire back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So just talk about the opportunity to talk to Chris. I know he's a Michigan guy and have the opportunity to have the background he had in professional baseball and then come back and do what he's doing in his alma mater.
Yeah, first of all, character-wise, just A+ dude. I met him last summer in Atlanta, and just pretty much walked up to him and introduced myself. And he was kind of like Palumbo, right, where he just give you a chance to develop a relationship. And we did that. And moving forward, we kept communicating just on different things. And then I reached out about this, and he was on board to do this and talk. And then he was on board to get involved in the Leo Mazzoni series also, and it's cool to see these high profile coaches like him be so willing to get involved in things and show a side that you don't normally see. And he's a brilliant mind. I mean, that guy, I'm pretty sure he can go do whatever he wants if he wants to. He just loves Michigan, and he's even tatted up with a little Michigan slogan that he learned there. I mean, he's an amazing guy as well. And that was a very cool episode where I was, to be honest with you, I think Rob Friedman, Pitching Ninja, wrote up those questions for me, because Federer's way too smart of a guy for me to be able to have a really intelligent pitching and baseball conversation with. So yeah, it was fun talking to him for sure.
Josh, last question I had for you. I know one of the guys, the highly touted prospects that you've had the opportunity to catch up with, is a guy named Luke Little. He's headed to the University of South Carolina, and he famously, in an indoor bullpen, hit 105 on the pocket radar. So just talk about that.
Yeah, today I saw Luke actually over at the facility, and we took a picture together. I posted it and said half of this group throws 105 miles per hour. And also I was with Luke Little. So it's what strikes me about interviewing some of these guys is how young they are. They're so talented these days, and they're so young, and they're so mature. And I think back to like when I was 19, I was not thinking or looking or acting like this. And, and to see this determination that so many people have, including Luke, like talking about he wants to be the best, and that's his goal. And he's pissed off that people don't believe it was 105, and that's a motivator. It's funny because like the Michael Jordan series, The Last Dance, Michael Jordan was always looking for something to motivate him, right? Like no matter what it was, he was going to find something to motivate him. And you see in kids like Luke Little and in Jesus Luzardo and in Trevor, these guys that we're talking to, they all have that same quality, and I saw Luke today. He was in Texas doing an event. He said it didn't go well. He didn't throw 105, but he was throwing off a flat ground with a spray paint on the grass. But I saw the arm action today. I saw the body today. He's going to be the real deal. I'm happy that I think one of the coolest things is going to be looking back on some of the guys I've talked to, because these are going to be just straight dudes in the game down the road.
Josh, thank you.
I'm sorry, Dave. I was just going to say, Josh, before we let you go, why don't you tell our viewers how they can follow you on YouTube, Twitter, and all your social media?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that opportunity. At JRudd_Scout is on Twitter and on Instagram. Really, I do most of the stuff on Twitter. And then YouTube, you can just search Josh Rudd and it will come up, the channel. Or JRUDD03, and there's a lot of stuff there, man. A lot of stuff that guys, honestly, like I tell my guys, you're stupid if you don't go watch it. And it's not because it's me, it's because it is phenomenal baseball. It's not me, like I'm not talking. It's not me the whole time. You're sitting there and listening to college coaches. Like it's not about me. I'm not telling people to subscribe and watch because it's me. You don't even watch me for most of the time. 95% of the time you're listening and learning from college coaches and pro guys, and it's amazing stuff. So I really hope people will go and check that stuff out on YouTube. And thank you guys very much, man. This This is weird. I don't know if I did good or not. I'm not used to this being on this side of it.
You did. You're usually interviewing people, and now we're interviewing you. So I know a different role, right?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you. Absolutely, Josh. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed the visit. We'll talk to you very soon.
All right, let's do it again. I'll see you guys.
All right. See you later, man. Take care. Now I'd like to welcome in one of my favorite people in all of sports, especially when it comes to pirate media, and making his debut on our podcast, The Sports Objective, ladies and gentlemen, from WITN TV. You see there in the background, Sports Director Billy Weaver. How are you, man?
Doing good, man. How you guys doing?
Very happy. Well. Obviously a tough day. It's been a tough time at East Carolina. I guess we can start off talking the tough stuff because you follow the program very closely for over 2 decades. I know this has got to be a tough day for you, ECU alum as well, with the news coming out with the financial concerns today.
Yeah, and it's not a big surprise. It's happening all over the college football landscape, all over the country with every kind of business. Of course, college football, college athletics is a business. And when you go through something like this, something none of us have ever gone through, but when the economy takes a hit like this, you can expect things like that to happen. So, it's been recommended that one or more sports be cut at East Carolina. Right now, that's not the case as far as any programs being cut, but we do expect something to happen. East Carolina has 20 athletic programs right now between their men's and women's sports. And actually, aside from UConn, that's the tops in the American Athletic Conference right now as far as numbers of programs. So you have to just kind of, think about which programs would be cut. I don't want to speculate. There are some that I have in my mind that I would think could go by the wayside at East Carolina. You hate to see any sports cut. But in this time right now, when the program is down almost $10 million, the athletic budget and program right now, and coaches taking pay cuts and furloughs being taken in departments, it's something that has to be done. And as a sports fan, let alone someone who covers sports and has been covering this program and went to East Carolina, and I've been covering this program for over 20 years, it's something you don't want to see. And, John Gilbert yesterday, he said it, quote, he said that this is actually gut-wrenching for me personally, and I can see that.
Absolutely. Like you're saying, I'm afraid that necessary evil is going to happen, unfortunately. And one of the things that stood out to me is how John Gilbert was saying that he was going to take a 20% pay cut for at least the next year, if not longer.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the sign of a true leader. It really is, right. Because it just shows that he's in it for the long haul, which I don't think a lot of people thought that about the previous administration. And as a true leader and as somebody, that I have people that work under me, and one of my mottos in this business is I will never ask someone to do something that I haven't done or would not do myself. And, as an athletic director, when you're asking coaches to cut back their budgets 10 to 20%, cut back on their salaries, cut back on their staffs, take furloughs and things like that, then it has to start from the top. And when he says, I'm not going to take any performance-based bonuses from here until I guess until this thing is over with, or as far as that's concerned, and then taking a 20% pay cut at least for a year, maybe even longer. I think that says a whole lot for the character of John Gilbert.
No question about it. I think, Billy, you covering the sport as far as athletics are concerned at East Carolina, it's a breath of fresh air. I know that over the last couple of years doing the podcast, seeing you, it's been a big change between having the very end of Geoff Colombo when we started the show until now. It's I hate to say night and day like a cliche, but it's been a lot easier to cover ECU athletics now.
Yeah, it certainly has. And, it's something that, a friend of mine, Stephen Igo, had put out today on Twitter, and something that I hadn't really thought about in this whole thing with watching the Board of Trustees meeting yesterday and hearing John Gilbert and everything. And yeah, Colombo is still being paid right now by the university. And that's something that's happened a lot here at East Carolina, especially in my tenure here. and it seems like every time someone is let go from the athletic department, be it an athletic director or a head coach, the Pirates end up getting, the short end of the stick with having to pay someone over the next few years. And that's the case with Compher right now, is that the university is still on the hook to pay him. And in this time, and with what everyone's going through and the problems financially with the athletic department, that's something that's going to be it's going to sting for this athletic department. And you look over there at the Town Bank Tower, and it's a beautiful facility. It really is. But I think it was probably overpaid for. It doesn't look like the East Carolina will reap the financial benefits that they originally thought from that Town Bank Tower, and it actually may be financially be a losing deal over there. So it's a tough time right now, but you know what? We're all Pirates, and we've been through tough times before, and I know we'll get through them again.
Yeah, just elaborating on what you're saying as far as Town Bank Tower, the projection over 30 years was for it to produce $42 million worth of revenue. And unfortunately, the way it looks right now, it's going to be costing us $6 million.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. And you know what? The thing is it could end up costing even more depending on what happens this college football season. We all have to remember that there have been no decisions made right now on the college football season. John Gilbert yesterday said that he expects college football at East Carolina to be played in front of students and fans, and that the students will be in classes on campus coming the fall. But that's not that's not a guarantee at all. That's just what we think right now. There's nobody across the country, no athletic director or no athletic program or even university as a whole anywhere in the country that can guarantee that, okay, students are going to be back in classes. College sports will be kind of back to normal, so to speak. We'll have fans in the stands. We just don't know that right now. And if we don't play, and I say we as the Pirates here in East Carolina, if East Carolina doesn't play a full 12-game schedule next year, if the schedule gets cut or you have to start later and games are being dropped, you only play 9 or 10 games. Well, that's, when you only play 12 games in an entire season, and that's what your entire athletic budget is surrounds, because that is the cash cow. That's, football is what drives the machine there and at every university basically in the country. So if you lose 3 games out of 12 just per se, that is a huge hit. So that $6 million number could go up even more if East Carolina doesn't play games or fans aren't allowed to come to the stadiums or what have you.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, get your thoughts on, we knew Mike Houston and this coaching staff was really going to tap into the transfer portal, and they've certainly done so. 5 guys headed East Carolina's way, with at least 4 of those being able to play immediately. We're hopeful that it will be all 5, especially with everything's going on with the transfer lineman Avery Jones, I believe it is, from UNC, transferring back closer to home. He was out of Havelock. So just talk about those guys and the impact you see them potentially making.
Well, hopefully a positive impact. And it's a case where, I've covered football for quite a long time, and their different coaches have different philosophies on transfers. And with transfers, it's a microwave fix. It really is. So you don't want to have too many transfers into your program. You want to obviously recruit guys, bring them in, learn your system, have them there for 4 to 5 years, and have them graduate as people that have made an impact on the program. But sometimes, just because of circumstances, you got to go out and you got to get these transfers, be it grad transfers or people that are transferring from one school to another because of, maybe they're not getting enough playing time. The fit isn't right. Hopefully there are no off the field issues, and that's why they're transferring. You obviously don't want that. But hopefully some of these guys will come in and make an impact. Now, statistically, and looking back at all the transfers that we've had in years past come in to this Pirate football program, I can't think of anybody right off the top of my head that is left out of here and you said, okay, that's a star guy. That's somebody that is that has made a huge impact on this team. It's the guys that East Carolina that come in with that chip on their shoulder and that are, not highly recruited out of high school, that come in and become the stars. And that's kind of the Pirate way. You look at guys like Vontae Leach, David Garrard, who was not a highly touted and recruited guy coming out of high school, came in here and was a superstar and played in the NFL for years, as did C.J. Wilson and guys like Chris Johnson. I mean, the list goes on and on. Justin Hardy. You can talk about all these guys that were not highly recruited. So that's what you want to do in your program, is get guys that are, that you recruit, those diamonds in the rough, so to speak. But with that being said, a guy like Chance Purvis, who was supposed to be the one starting, the one guy starting on that defensive line coming back. He's now out of the program and has been suspended and off the team for off the field issues. Well, then all of a sudden you've got this huge hole on that defensive line. So hopefully, Chris Willis, the guy from App State, the defensive end, will come in and fill that hole. So those are the type of situations that you really need. And of course, we've talked about this for the last couple of years, is problems and holes in that offensive line. You got two offensive linemen coming in now, Justin Chase, I think it is, from NC State, two ACC guys, Avery Jones and Justin Chase from UNC and NC State, coming in to hopefully patch up and help out on that offensive line as well. So those are the situations that Mike Houston is really doing a great job in. He's not going out trying to build a program with transfers. He's just trying to fill holes right now.
Absolutely. And I'm excited about all these transfers, not because of where they're coming from, but because of what I've seen on film once I found out they're going to be Pirates. And you referenced Chris Willis, a guy who's originally from Shelby, was a starter at Appalachian, was going to be a starter again last year in 2019, but unfortunately he had an injury. Hopefully he's 100% or getting there now, and he'll be able to come in and make an impact, because we certainly need it. Like you said, and like Coach Houston said on this program, here within the last couple weeks, we only have 35 snaps returning on the defensive line.
Yeah. I mean, that defensive line and in the secondary as well. I think Nigel Knott, the cornerback from Alabama, this is a guy that was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. Hopefully he can be a plug and play kind of guy where you get him in here, and that defense is a little thin. East Carolina's thin right now, pretty much all over defensively, especially that defensive line and offensive line. That's what worries me a little bit about the Pirates, is because winning ball games comes down to offensive line and defensive line play, is winning those games in the trenches. When you have those holes in the trenches like that, you worry as a fan. And, I think they're addressing that issue, and hopefully, and of course, we're talking about all this, and we don't even know when these guys are going to be able to get on campus and get into the strength and conditioning rooms and the weight rooms and things like that, and get together. And, this is going to be a very interesting offseason to see how all this unfolds.
No doubt about it. Billy, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is being an alum and following the program for so long, is the very fact that this, to me, is the best time as far as coaches that we've had, and probably since you and I have been students back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I think when it comes down to, I was thinking about before we were doing this interview with you, it's what Al Davis, the former owner of the Oakland Raiders, used to say, is just win, baby. That's what we need to do, is win. We need to win some games. That's the problem we have right now. If we don't win games, we've had 5 straight losing seasons. That's a fact. And because we've had 5 straight losing seasons, their Pirate fans are out there. And once we start winning, they'll come back. And that's when the money will come in. The question is, when will we start winning? Soon. It will be sooner, hopefully, than later. And that will help the program get a shot in the arm as far as finances are concerned.
Yeah, I think more than the quote, just win, baby. I think the quote, as far as my mind, is patience, grasshopper. Yeah. Much patience. You gotta be patient. And the problem is, in the world of athletics, not just on the college ranks, but in the world of athletics, we don't have any patience. As fans of the game, we all cover sporting events as members of the media, but we're also fans as well. So we get it. But fans have no patience. They want a winner now, and they don't want to wait on a winner. Mike Houston is putting this program and getting them back on their feet. As far as one of the first things that he did is he wanted to come in and instill a sense of pride in this program again, and the pride of being a Pirate, some stability, And, he wanted everything to be regimented, which wasn't the case here before. And, structure. And Mike Houston has been great in instilling structure here and that attitude of winning. Now you just got to get the pieces of the puzzle. And I think, like we talked about earlier with the transfers coming in, with some of the guys that he's developing over the last couple of years. And, Holt Nailers is going to have another year under his belt at the quarterback position. They got some great skill position guys coming back. I think it just takes a little bit of time. East Carolina was very close, to winning 5 or 6 games last year. It just didn't come to fruition that way. College football is a crazy game. Just a couple of plays here and there can affect the outcome of a game. I think East Carolina will be much better this year. And if they can win 6 games and get back to a bowl game, I think that would prove to be tremendous for this program and keeping this program going in the right direction. The one thing I really like about Mike Houston, aside from the structure and what he's brought to the table here personally at East Carolina, is the staff that he's brought back with having Coach Shankweiler and Donnie Kirkpatrick. Those guys have years and years and years of experience under their belt. They've all worked together before. Those guys know this area. You got some other guys like Trip Weaver and everybody. You got guys over there that know what East Carolina football is all about. And I think the winning will come. We just have to be patient, Grasshopper.
Now, Billy, kind of still talking about football, but just the bigger picture and everything we're dealing right now with the coronavirus, COVID-19, and just whether football will start on time. Will it be a delayed start? Could it be potentially even in the spring? Just talk about for you personally, and then what you think Pirate Nation at large when football is played, if it's played. What do you think fans will be like? Or how many fans do you think will be able to come out to Dowdy-Ficklen or choose to come out?
Well, that's a good question, because how many will be allowed to come out is a big question. Will they say, okay, well, you can only have, Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium holds close to 50,000, if not right about that 50,000 mark. Well, what if they say, government officials say, okay, well, you can have half capacity of your stadium. So just kind of like businesses are now, that if there's the capacity to have 500 people in a select business, you can only have a certain amount, a percentage of that capacity allowed in the doors at one time. Will that be the case with sports? If it is, and you're only allowed 25,000 fans, who do you, I guess it's a first come, first serve kind of thing. Of course, you got your season ticket holders that will have priorities, but getting back to your original question, how many people will show up if allowed? I tell you what, I can say this with pretty certainty that at East Carolina University, the first game back, they'll be hanging from the rafters. And I think that would be the case at a lot of sporting events across the country, because people are starving for sports right now, and especially live sports. And having been cooped up in your house and in quarantine and not being able to go anywhere, that first sporting event that you're allowed to go to, or that first concert, or whatever it is in a huge setting, people will be there. That's for sure. It would be a madhouse there, I think, that first game, if the situation allows all the fans to come back.
And you bring up an interesting point as far as season tickets. Sorry, Dave, I know you got a question.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to follow up, since he mentioned season tickets. And if there is a reduced capacity, that's something we've talked about. Is there a premium placed on those season tickets, because you might only have 15,000 people in attendance? So like you said, whether it's first come, first serve, I think you got to cater to your season ticket holders, the ones that are really committing to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, John Gilbert yesterday mentioned season tickets, and he said, of course, going into the season, their goal was 16,000 season tickets. They've had to back off of that goal, obviously, for obvious reasons. Now down to 10,000 is the goal, because they said they've sold 4,600 season tickets as of right now. And that's not a knock on East Carolina. That's not a knock on the fans. Has nothing to do with the last few seasons of East Carolina football. It has everything to do with what we're going through right now in this COVID-19 pandemic, and what the situation that we're in right now. People, for one, don't have that extra spending money. They don't have that, that extra cash laying around to buy season tickets and to do things like that, because there are so many people that are out of work right now. The people that are still working and have the ability to buy those season tickets are still waiting to see, okay, well, do I buy a season ticket now? Because I don't even know if we're going to have a season, let alone a full season. Or, if it's the case, it was announced yesterday and it was discussed that if there's not a 12-game season or the 6 regular season home games for the season tickets, if that is affected some way, then refunds will be given. So that's kind of good to think about if you're a Pirate fan on the fence of getting that season ticket or not. If they don't play a certain amount of games, then you'll get a refund. So that's the good news for that. But yeah, it's just an interesting deal right now. And I think the biggest thing right now is just trying to figure out and finding out how many fans will be allowed at the stadium once they start playing again.
Billy, I want to ask you, being a broadcasting nerd, how in the world have you dealt with not having a lot of, you don't have sports. I think we have NASCAR and UFC back. That's about it, right? How have you handled that personally and professionally?
Well, it's amazing because when we first went into this thing and all the sports leagues were postponing and no sports were going on, I'm thinking, what are we going to do? There's nothing to talk about. I have been pleasantly surprised at the sports content that we've been able to have over the last couple of months, because now we get to dive in a little bit deeper into recruiting. So many youngsters around Eastern North Carolina that are signing with institutions of higher learning at colleges and everything, that we on a nightly basis don't have time to get to different places. We've been able to do what we're doing now, virtual signings and things like that, with news of from the NFL, players signing with different teams, changing teams, all of the things that we don't usually have time or the resources to get to, we've been able to do during this whole COVID-19. And so while we don't have a whole lot of highlights and games and stuff like that to talk about, we have plenty of sports stuff to talk about, because there's all of the off the field things that go on in the world of sports that we now have time to talk about.
Billy, I had a question for you. Our fellow co-host Kyle was unable to join us tonight, but here a few weeks back, you obviously had a scare and you thought you may have COVID-19. Did you ever find out what you had contracted?
Well, interesting story is that, I had started feeling really bad, and I guess it was mid-March, right when this whole thing started feeling really bad, coughing really bad. And, I went to my doctor and she immediately did a flu test. And that, of course, is the same. You can do a flu test and the COVID-19 test the same way, as they basically take a Q-tip that long. I know it was the longest Q-tip I've ever seen. And they pretty much shove it all the way up into your brain. But they did a flu test for me, and, you can get those back in 5-10 minutes. Well, the doctor came back and said, well, you don't have the flu, but you got something going on, and we're going to test you for the coronavirus. And with that being said, we're going to quarantine you for 3 to 4 days until the test results come back. So I said, okay. And I quarantined myself at home. Well, 3 or 4 days pass, nothing, no results. 5, 6, 7 days pass. It was 9 days until I got my test results back. When I finally got the test results back, I got a call from my doctor, and she said, okay, we finally got the test results back and they've come back negative. And I said, well, what was it? And she said, well, let me just say that with what happened with your test results is that we expected them to come back in 3 or 4 days. And typically those early on in the testing, the ones that were coming back in 3 or 4 days were negative, and it was pretty quick. Some of the ones they couldn't tell if they were negative or positive, or they had issues with, they had to retest and then retest. And that's why mine, in my doctor's opinion, thought that it took so long, because they had to recheck it a couple of times. They just weren't absolutely sure. Then after 9 days, they finally come back with a negative result. But my doctor said up to 25% of those results that had come back were false negatives. And she said, and I quote, my doctor said in her clinical opinion that I had it. And that I just powered through it. And it was one of those situations where she, in her professional opinion, thinks that it may have been a false negative. but I mean, it was negative, and that's what I'm going with now. But there's still that question whether or not I had it or not. So to tell you the truth, if I didn't have the coronavirus, I don't know what it was, but whatever it was knocked me down, and it's something I've never experienced before. It was very tough. I was stuck in my house for 9 days straight, and just felt like complete crap, and slept. I must have slept maybe 16, 17 hours a day. It was that much. It was that much. It was that draining, and it really just kind of knocked me down.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, Billy, with the need for content, obviously ESPN made that decision to bump up the 10-part series, The Last Dance, and came to a conclusion here a couple of days ago. Just a tremendous 10-part series. So just talk about that. Me even not caring for the Bulls whatsoever during that time, I really enjoyed going back and watching that.
I really did too. And that, you know what, that was one of the positives coming out of this whole deal with not having live sports, is that you're able to watch some of the old sporting events and some of the things that you relive that, you know, I mean, I've been in this business so long, you've covered so many events and so much sports over, you know, I've been in the business more than 25 years. And you just kind of forget some of the things that, you know, you go back and say, oh man, I remember that. That was so cool. And, you know, I had forgotten that this guy did this or that guy did that, or I remember that time in history. And it was really cool to watch the whole series. And funny that you mentioned that, because last night I was looking, I actually had the honor of when I worked in Columbus, Georgia, and when I worked in Florence, South Carolina, I went to a number of NBA games. When I was in South Carolina, we covered the Hornets, the Charlotte Hornets at the time. So I got to see MJ play against the Hornets, and I also got to see Michael play down in Atlanta when I was in Columbus, Georgia. And I actually got to see Michael Jordan play baseball. I was in South Carolina at the time, and he was playing for the Birmingham Barons, and there were the Greenville Braves up in Greenville, South Carolina. Well, Jordan and the Barons were coming into town. And, you know, of course, we were there. I got credentials, and it was one of the neatest things. And remembering that and seeing that during the Last Dance on ESPN, I started looking for pictures, and I found these. So I actually have them with me. If you can see this right here, that's a picture I took of Jordan in a Birmingham Barons uniform. This was one I was in the dugout, and he walked by. This is one of my favorite pictures of Michael Jordan. And you can see how skinny he is in a baseball uniform.
Yeah.
And then that swing of him, this is one inside the batting cage before the game. But it was really cool to kind of reminisce. I had forgotten I'd taken these pictures. So yeah, you know, when you seen The Last Dance and stuff like that, I started going through all these old pictures and old boxes. I found some old racing pictures. This is Dale Earnhardt that I took in Darlington, of him actually yawning at a race. If you remember, in 1997, it was reported that he fell asleep during a race and went into the wall. No one hit him and anything. So I thought that was really cool that I have a picture of him yawning before the start of a race. It was just really cool. Got some old pictures of Dale Jr. at Darlington in Victory Lane. And it's just, this time has allowed me to kind of reflect and look back. And I got one more for you that I thought was really cool. When I used to cover the Hornets back in the day, you know who those guys are? That's a thin Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh,
and
wow.
a lot
right, yeah.
There'd be teammates on the Miami Heat. So it's been really cool to kind of relive some old stuff. But with that being said, I'm ready for live sporting events to come back, and finally got a little taste of that on Sunday with the race at Darlington. And right now I've got the live radar up for Darlington. They're trying to get the Xfinity Series race underway, and it looks like it's starting to clear out now. And hopefully they'll get that race underway. 7 races total over the next 11 days. So we finally got some live sports back.
I'm going to save the last question for you, Billy, tonight. Appreciate you so much for coming on. The hardest one. When will the Redskins start winning again?
Oh, yeah, that's
I tried to make it through the whole interview. So.
That's a good question. Hopefully very soon. Let me tell you something, though. I really love the hire of Ron Rivera. You know, being here in Eastern North Carolina and covering a lot of Charlotte Hornets. a lot of Carolina Panthers games. I had Charlotte Hornets on my mind, but covering a lot of Carolina Panthers game, having gone to the Super Bowls when when the Carolina Panthers were there. Of course, in 2015, Ron Rivera was the head coach. I've always loved Ron. Defensive-minded guy. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy, and he's a player. He's a player's coach. The players love him. I think he'll turn that Washington Redskins program around. Now, that's assuming Daniel Snyder can stay out of his way. Now, if Daniel Snyder allows Ron Rivera and the staff there to do what they do best, I think they can turn things around. I'm really excited about Chase Young. I think he is the most talented player to come out of this year's draft. We needed some help on the defensive line. You need a pass rusher, a guy on that other edge over there, and hopefully, with a second year in this new offensive system, that Washington can get some victories. I hope so, because it's been a long time. I can remember back in the days in the 87 season, the 91 season, when they went to the Super Bowl, when these teams were really, really good. I remember those days, and a lot of Redskins fans now, and a lot of just NFL fans in general that are in that 20 to 30-year-old range have no idea that the Redskins actually used to be pretty good.
Billy, I have one final question for you. This is from one of our viewers, a guy named Mike Radford, who's a Wilson resident. He was an excellent wrestler for the Pirates back in the 70s, a lot of Southern Conference titles. But I know he says, ask where your college days were spent. I know you spent those college days in Greenville. So just talk about a couple, or maybe three of your favorite memories during your time as a Pirate as a student.
Oh, wow. My first year here was 1991. And now I went to community college for a year, Tidewater Community College. I'm from Virginia Beach. So when I was looking at transferring to a Division I college, it was down to three. I had got accepted to East Carolina, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia. And a lot of my friends in the Tidewater area were coming down to East Carolina because at that time, that was the East Carolina, and I think still is, the closest Division I school to the Tidewater area. The University of Virginia is 2.5 hours away up in Charlottesville. Virginia Tech is 6 hours away from the Virginia Beach area, so that was a long haul. I didn't know much about East Carolina, and I kind of did a little bit of research and stuff and on their football program, and I knew they'd had some pretty good football years. But my first year here at East Carolina was 1991. They go 11-1. I remember those days at Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium. So I, as a student, thought, okay, this is the way it's all. This is East Carolina football. I didn't know any better. That very first year, they go 11-1. They're ranked number 9 in the country at the end of the season. I thought, okay, if you're ever going to get hooked on Pirate football, that's what's going to do it. And that hooked me from day one. And I can remember, I have so many memories of East Carolina, and most of them around the football program. I remember Pittsburgh coming in, and I remember Jeff Blake running the 2-point conversion. I remember beating South Carolina at Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium, which I thought was really cool. I also remember one of my other fond memories is, I don't know if you guys remember this, there was an NBA game, an NBA exhibition game played at Minges Coliseum. That was the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Utah Jazz, because Blue Edwards kind of set that up. I went, and I still have my ticket stub somewhere at home. I actually have the ticket stub. I remember I paid $13 for a ticket, and back in 1990, I think that was the 90, maybe 92. But back then, $13 for a student, I was like, man, I don't know if I want to pay this much to go see an NBA exhibition game, but I did, and it was at Minges Coliseum before the renovation and everything. But that was a pretty fond memory of my days at ECU as well.
Billy, I know you're busy with getting ready for sports. What you got coming up at 11 for folks watching right now?
Well, I'm watching the radar here over the city of Darlington and seeing if they're going to get that Xfinity Series race. But earlier today, we talked to Dustin Lineback. That name may ring familiar with ECU football fans. He was a linebacker at ECU from 2007 to 2011. He's a NASCAR jackman, and of course, he is with Hendrick Motorsports right now. And he was part of the very first race on Sunday, back the first live sporting event. We caught up with him before the Xfinity Series race today. He's actually at the track right now, and he is going to be on Justin Allgaier's team in the Xfinity Series coming up tonight, if they do get this race underway. But we talked to him about being a Pirate and some of the former guys ahead, before him, Ed Watkins and Jeff Carr, guys that have made that leap from ECU football into the NASCAR ranks. So he talked about that. He talked about, kind of the honor of being the first sport back and a lot of other stuff. You can actually catch that online at WITN.com. We got that interview posted there. So we'll have some more on that coming up at 11 o'clock. So that was really fun to catch up with Dustin Lineback, former ECU linebacker that's now in the ranks of NASCAR, doing very well, I might add as well.
That sounds fun. I can't wait to take a look at that. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate the time and look forward to having you. Maybe next time we can have on, we can actually talk about sports and the live sport action going on with the Pirates.
Yeah, hopefully Pirate football. I mean, that's the big, everybody's keeping their fingers crossed that, we can have Pirate football this fall. And then after that, everything gets back to normal. I just hope and I pray that once we do get back to some sense of normalcy in the world of sports, that we don't get hit with a second round of some kind of virus. So I'm trying not to think about that, but of course that's always in the back of your mind. So hopefully once we get past this, we can get back to normal sports and get back to doing what we love to do.
Well, enjoyed it. Looking forward to see that interview tonight with Dustin Lineback, and look forward to seeing you again. As always, enjoyed the time with you, and you're one of my favorites, and hopefully we can have you back on again real soon.
All right, I hope so. It's been fun, guys.
All right.
All right,
have a good night. Appreciate it, Billy. All right, Billy Weaver, WITN Sports Director. Think a lot of him, and Bubba, he's excellent, and definitely what's great about the Pirate Media is all the guys, the ladies that are part of Pirate Media covering the sport really love the Pirates. It's a really unique situation. He's a perfect example of someone who went to the school and cares a lot about East Carolina.
Yeah, I love hearing Billy's thoughts. And when I think of Billy Weaver, I think of him going on Pirate Radio with Double B, Brian Bailey, Troy D, sometimes Brian Meador, and that cast of characters. I know they'll joke around about it, saying, "Why would anybody listen?" But they certainly have some intriguing stories, absolutely hilarious stories, and they do an excellent job with all their Pirate Radio programming, but really enjoy the press box.
No doubt about it. You see my son Alexander. Can you say hey, Alex?
Hey.
What's up, Alex? Time for him to go to bed. So that means about time for us to wrap things up. Bubba, I know that we've got some great programming coming up. If you want to shoot that out for everybody before we go.
Yeah, take a look at the ticker at the bottom of the screen. You think back to Steve Spurrier's days at Florida, the head ball coach. One of his first quarterbacks after going to Gainesville to coach his alma mater is Shane Matthews. He was a two-time All-SEC player and or Player of the Year, I should say, in the SEC. Obviously, that made him All-SEC. But then in addition to that, he's a Florida Hall of Famer. And just we'll talk to him about winning the 91 SEC title, playing in the inaugural SEC title game in 92 at Legion Field back before they tore down the upper deck. Unfortunately, it didn't go the Gators' way that day. They came up a little bit shy against Alabama and that tremendous Crimson Tide team. But that's one of those SEC storied where he and those Alabama players went back to Legion Field and relived it several years later, which was very interesting. But we'll catch up with Shane, talk about the head ball coach, talk about playing in the Fun and Gun, and a lot of other topics. So really looking forward to that conversation. And then we also probably on Friday, we think this will probably be a traditional interview, maybe not necessarily on Facebook and YouTube, but that's still to be determined. But we'll be catching up with Jamie Shaw. He is from the Absolute Basketball Experience. He does an excellent job with his YouTube channel. So just search Absolute Basketball Experience on YouTube, and you can find that. And we'll share that on our social media. But he also just has a podcast as well. Kind of does what Josh Rudd does with baseball coaches. Jamie catches up with different basketball coaches, head and assistant at the college level. Also catches up with top high school prospects, many of which are in the state of North Carolina. So we'll talk to him about some of the top guys in the 2021 and then 2022 classes. So those are a couple of the guests that we'll have headed your way over the next few days.
All right. So I want to thank everybody watching, obviously on YouTube and Facebook Live. And we'll put this out as a podcast as well, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Thanks to obviously Josh and Billy, and a great friend and obviously producer and booker of the show, Bubba Rosenbaum. He does it all, and co-host. I'm Dave Richmond right here for the Sports Objective Podcast. Good night. Go Pirates.